Nice to meet you all. My name is Raúl Kripalani. Just a little bit of background because I don't know if I've met people here yet. There's not many people left, but given that I'm rejoining the libp2p project after kind of like a period focusing on other things, I wanted to kind of like reintroduce myself to the community very quickly. So in 2018, between 2018 and 2019, I led the libp2p project, initially as a tech lead and then as a project lead from Protocol Labs. libp2p is an open community, but kind of like, you know, at those times it was heavily steered by Protocol Labs. And as we upgrade the community these days, we want to make sure that that governance and that decision making is closer to the community as we kind of like roll out the foundation and the core fund and so on, right? So I was initially onboarded to work on Go libp2p, and one of the things that I helped with was I worked really closely with ETH2 researchers to drive libp2p adoption in Ethereum and standardization, up to like literally writing the spec with them for libp2p usage within ETH2. I also helped bootstrap 3 libp2p implementations. Some of them with like literally my own hands. So I know libp2p really, really well, at least back then. I know it's changed in a few kind of like protocols and layers since then, so I need to get reacquainted with those changes. I also spun up, so what was kind of like maybe the seed of like what the core fund is really gonna scale out to do was back in the day, it was like we needed a way to extend grants. So we spun up a dev grants system. This was heavily used in ETH Berlin. If any one of you was there, I think libp2p was spotlighted as like a key project that was around the time that ETH was adopting libp2p, and kind of like, you know, the community was focusing on these public goods that tend to be like invisible because they do not receive a lot of attention, but they're actually backing all the networks that we run, right? So libp2p was featured. We extended 7 grants, and things like, for example, libp2p Noise came out of that. If you remember, Wireshark dissectors as well for a bunch of things, and there were some really good projects out of that. I also created a test ground, which we used in libp2p to roll out massive fixes to the DHT, to the Kademlia DHT gossips, and then we used when we created the gossip sub extensions for hardening and like to harden the security. So that was a pretty important project for libp2p as well. And then also drove new protocols and components. And then moved on to Falcon. But once libp2p, always libp2p. So I'm very happy to be back in the community and help with these 2 things, setting up the libp2p Foundation and also advising the core fund. So what I wanted to work through today was, and I was hoping, you know, maybe like that we were a lot more people here because I wanted to hear a lot more diverse inputs. I want to make this session interactive. I don't want to talk about like what my vision for libp2p is or what, like how we should roadmap libp2p. I do want to point out a few past examples of the libp2p community getting together to roadmap like key contributions and key changes and evolutions and innovations that we wanted to see in the stack. Many of these have actually been achieved. So this was an exercise that we did in 2019. We incubated at Protocol Labs, and you know, messy Google Doc that kind of like was structured in several categories there. So it was like a visionary category, hardening existing implementations, evolving, and the product category. And we kind of like fleshed out things like, for example, a bulletproof DHT or service discovery and rendezvous, polite peering and wire protocol, so that peers are not like disappearing and disconnecting abruptly, and like there's some graceful back pressure and a bunch of other things, right? Message-oriented transports, peer exchange protocol, like these are things that we specified back then, and then we moved out to a proper doc that was public and visible to the community, and also accepted obviously community discussion and like triggered community discussion, and also, you know, ownership by the larger community. A lot of these items have actually been checked off already, so it's pretty cool to see that. Some of them haven't, and like, you know, this is a good point to kind of like reevaluate what is important to us as a community. So I wanted to like touch on why road mapping is really important, and specifically in open source, and from my experience, how that exercise really drove alignment in the libp2p community back then. So just a few things here. Road mapping allows us to establish shared goals and visions that we want to chase as a community. It allows us to align the efforts of different implementers and different groups and stakeholders and participants that are participating in the community, drives more focused execution and structured collaboration. And this is really important. It tells users what we are intending to work on, right, as a community, and what we value and what we're planning to focus on. And also it influences how funding and resources are allocated. And I think this is pretty important for the core fund. We want to really understand what the community values as we kind of like, so that we can prioritize and allocate and plan for allocating resources to maybe complex projects or endeavors that might come out of collective road mapping, right?